If you watch TV, then these ads are familiar. But according to a recent study, African American and Hispanic consumers in the U.S. are disproportionately exposed to ads promoting junk food. The Rudd Center for Food Policy and Obesity at the University of Connecticut found that of the more than $1 billion spent annually on advertising to Blacks and Hispanics, 86% of spending targeting Black consumers and 82% aimed at Hispanics was for junk food and sugary drinks. Food policy expert Michael Roberts has seen this kind of data before, but the impact is no less shocking.
I've been at this for a long time, and I was amazed, not just in television advertising, but social media advertising, video games, and et cetera, et cetera. And it really caught me off guard.
The advertising blitz isn't the only problem facing low-income communities of color. There's also a lack of quality food options. These areas are called food deserts, a place where there are no good grocery stores or healthy restaurants. Instead, these areas are overrun by fast food restaurants and convenience stores.
Wow, look at.
That's where nonprofit groups like PHFE Women, Infant and Children, or WIC, come into play. They provide educational and nutritional services to low-income families who often have higher health risks. There are nearly 50 centers throughout Southern California, which serve more than 200,000 people every month. People like Maria Zarate, who has learned to make better choices for her kids. But she's well aware of the food industry's tactics.
Especially when it means a trip to Wendy's.
They don't worry about their health. They don't worry about what problems they could cause them. They don't think about the kids at all. They just think about themselves making money, maybe. That's pretty much it.
WIC dietitian Jennifer Torres admits it sometimes feels like a David and Goliath situation.
It is an uphill battle. There can always be more resources and more programs that are going to be helping out our families get that knowledge and help them understand what is behind a food label or what is behind that ad. Or, not all advertised healthy foods are healthy foods.
But it's also about taking legal action against companies pushing junk food.
If the advertising is actually creating unfairness in the marketplace, and one could argue that this kind of advertising is doing just that, then presumably a lawsuit or a cause of action could be filed under state law. We haven't really seen that attempted, but it's there and it's a possibility.
That's not food. This is food.
But there is a hurdle, the First Amendment, which protects free speech, and that includes commercial speech. All the more reason that nutritional advocates like PHFE WIC embrace the adage, knowledge is power, which in turn can help level the playing field for communities that need it most. Mei Lee, CGTN, Los Angeles.
Healthy German food.
All right. What's happening, everybody? My name is D Moss. I'm on with my co-host. What's good, sir?
What's going on, D Moss? How we doing?
Doing good. If you don't know, his name is Justin Yard. And he's that healthy guy from Our Journeys Fitness. He's our resident specialist. And we're going to talk with him. We don't have a guest on today, but we are going to talk about that thing we call Black health. We want to talk a little bit about diet. And with Springfield, again, being a red city from last I heard in terms of the COVID incidents of COVID being up. And anytime pandemic numbers rises, our community tends to be impacted the most. So today we're going to talk about Black health, what it is, what it isn't. We want to talk about diet and how diet, we've been talking about diet the last couple of weeks. We want to talk about how diet impacts our health. And then we want to talk about what's most important when preserving our health in terms of what we eat, how we work out, how we exercise our organs, our muscles, all that good stuff. Is that cool?
Let's make that happen.
All right. So let's start out. I'm going to ask you a question. What exactly, in your perspective, what is Black health?
Black health is actually the understanding of the Black body and foods related to the Black body, and also environment related to the Black body. So from a standpoint of just how our genome is and where we are in hotter climates, what we are supposed to have as far as environment goes, from oxygen levels to sunlight exposure and to the foods related to that. I mean, so that's really Black health, and also our response to stress, real stress, social environment as well, mental health, and that's all encompassing for Black health.
Okay, you said understanding of the Black body. Why is that significant? Is it different from any other body? From a public health perspective, and I'm not a public health expert, but I'm hearing more and more about everything being assessed from a public health perspective. So as we talk about public health, we talk about Black health. When you talk about Black health, you mentioned Black bodies.
Yeah.
Talk about why is that important? Why is that significant for Black people to understand Black bodies?
Well, it's simple. Let's really break it down. At the end of the day, there's disparities in certain diseases when it comes to Black people and our white counterparts or Asian counterparts. And so if there's disparities in health, right, in these diseases, there's probably a difference in our bodies on how our bodies manifest disease. So we can't just take public health because, first of all, you're in America with many different cultures, backgrounds, ethnicities. And so with that comes a different meal plan, comes a different sun exposure, oxygen level. If somebody that lives in Antarctica, right? There's actually an indigenous group in Antarctica. They eat whale blubber and they survive off of whale blubber. Can we go now and survive off of whale blubber? No. But in America, they create one standard that says, all right, if one group can survive off of this, then everybody can survive off of this. And the Black body is so different than the Eurocentric allopathic medicine approach that it shows in how we take medication and how medication affects us, our nutrition, our access to sunlight. Access to sunlight sometimes is depression and different mental health diseases. We get seasonal depression. We cannot be out of the sun for too long. So those are just some of the examples that show that the Black body itself is, from a DNA standpoint, they may say that it's not because they did the Human Genome Project, right? But at the end of the day, we require different minerals, vitamins at different levels. We require more sunlight than certain our white counterparts. We require more leafy greens than our white counterparts. And this is just things that you can look into on the internet when it comes to different disease and health disparities between Black and white people.
All right. Now, you mentioned health disparity. I just want to say real quick, a health disparity refers to a higher burden of illness, injury, disability, or mortality experienced by one group relative to another. A healthcare disparity typically refers to the differences between groups in health insurance coverage, access, and service delivery, as well as the quality of that service, that health service delivery, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Because I always hear people talking about, healthcare disparity. but no one ever takes the time to explain what exactly that means. I see people, using terms like, well, if you look at the healthcare disparities, like, well, what exactly is a healthcare disparity? So I just want to make sure people understand that when they hear that, again, it just refers to a higher burden of illness, injury, disability, mortality, talks about access to health insurance coverage, access to and use of medical care, and then it also takes into account the quality of that care. So I just want to throw that out, and I know you had mentioned that. And earlier we watched the video when they talk about food deserts. I just want to be clear, just so everyone understands, we had Liz O'Gilby on a few weeks ago. So we're kind of taking that whole food desert term, and we're going to park that somewhere in the back of the room. We're going to talk about food apartheid.
Yep.
So she got on me, so I'm getting on everybody else. I heard the narrator in the video talk about food desert, and I'm like, no, food apartheid.
Yeah.
So go for it. I see you about to say something.
Yeah, I think, first of all, that just takes the responsibility away from the people that are actually enacting food apartheid. So when you say food desert, that in your mind is something that happens naturally. Desert, you think of something that nature, that's natural. No, this is food apartheid. So it is literally a systematic approach to now what you would call demineralizing and taking away nutrients from the Black community to increase their likelihood of disease and infirmity. So that's a little weapon of warfare. They know it, they understand it. It's not something that you have to even pontificate about. It's something that they understand, because I think 16,000, this is in Springfield, I think 16,000 people in Springfield live in a food desert. And I think that's Bay, Pine Point, and I think 2 other places. And I'm forgetting the other places, right? And so, and with that food desert, right, when you look at the numbers, 25% of Springfield has diabetes is 25% higher in Springfield than in any other area in Massachusetts.
More so than Boston?
Say it again.
We have a higher rate than Boston.
25% of diabetes mortality. Let me even be
mortality. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And that is complications or death due to complications due to diabetes, and that's 25%, and that's in areas Pine Point, Bay, and what's the other one that's right near Bay Street? I'm terrible with the neighborhoods in Springfield. It's right near, right if you're going past Phoenix by Wilbraham Road, if you keep going up, that neighborhood as well. So those are the areas that have the highest mortality rate within diabetes, and those are the areas that are living, and those people are living in food deserts. So now someone could just say, is it causation or correlation, right? Is it because they don't have access to quality food? I'm sorry, food apartheid, but is it because they don't have access to quality food, and most of individuals don't have a means of transportation besides the public transportation? But we would have to go with causation. All right, these are the reasons why these people are dying from diabetes, and we're talking about type 2 diabetes, right? Which is what some doctors may include in a lifestyle disease, meaning that you can change and manage diabetes through your lifestyle. So these things are very important to understand when we talk about food apartheid, because at the end of the day, it can be changed. This can be changed. You can petition for a Big Y to come into your neighborhood, right? And I know you know that they have had those situations where Big Y was supposed to come to Mason Square, something happened, or there was. These are things that the neighborhood council can go to their leaders and actually petition for, and things of that nature. I don't know if you can second that, because you experienced that firsthand for sure.
Right. It would be a corporate decision in terms of whether or not they feel that the investment was there, whether or not they can get a good return on their investment, their capital. So it's not as simple as saying we're going to, launch a petition and force the supermarket to be here. That's my understanding. So there are folks who worked on it, and maybe at some point we could bring them in and talk about the efforts in the past and why things went a certain way.
So that's what I'm seeing a lot of, is just the government really phrasing things in a sense where they don't have to take responsibility for the food apartheid that's been happening in the United States. And one of the big things is understanding that it's harder to kill somebody with a gun because that's overt, right?
Yep.
I truly believe food is one of the primary weapons of warfare in our country when it comes to the Black community.
So you're saying that we're starving with full bellies.
I love that. Whoa. Okay. Far starving with full belly. Put that on a t-shirt, man. Put that on a t-shirt.
No, but in essence, that's what we're doing. Well, you know, you grab 3 or 4 cheeseburgers, some fries, there's no nutrients, nothing of value. It's like eating dirt.
Yep.
So you're full, but you know.
Yeah, and the funniest thing is about that is like when you look at the word malnutrition, which is lacking nutrition, bad nutrition, malnutrition, right?
Yeah.
You equate it to what? Africa. Like you're thinking of kids, they got flies on their face.
Oh, with the bloated bellies and the fly. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But when you look at it, statistically speaking, America is on the top 5 lists for countries that are industrialized, especially let's specify that industrialized countries in malnutrition and diseases related to malnutrition, right? And so we live in the life. We live in the standard American diet, which is we have enough what they will call food to feed the world twice over, but we're dealing with issues and diseases that are directly correlated with malnutrition.
Right. So is it all groups across the board in America? Is it specific groups? If I went to rural Appalachia, up in the Appalachian Mountains with the poor whites, would I see the same type of food deserts? Would I experience the same type of health disparities?
You would definitely see some lifestyle, I would say diseases that are related to lifestyle, right? So the high blood pressure, the diabetes, the heart disease, the cholesterol, high cholesterol, things of that nature. But their access to quality air, their ability to farm, those are things that they kind of grew up knowing. Because if you go to the Berkshires, you don't have to go that far. Go to the Berkshires. You know what I mean? Right. Some things in Palmer and upwards, northern, you have very poor whites that live there. You know what I mean? Not really middle class, but from my knowledge, they're poor white.
And they're not dealing with the same health issues. So, and I bring that up because people always talk. I see, what's up, KJ, Dr. Banks? KJ said narrative shift is always, because typically when we talk about Black health, we talk about poverty. Mm-hmm. And which makes you wonder, is, you know, just our very being, state of our body condition, Black health, is that political? Is it poverty-based, or are there other factors that come into play?
It's definitely poverty, not based, but it shows a strong leg in poverty, because if you take out poverty, right, if you look at Margaret Sanger, right, and the Parenthood situation, right, and that was a part of the eugenics movement, which was to find and basically take out individuals that were less likely to contribute to society, as they would say, right? Yep. And Sanger started the Planned Parenthood, which is still here today. That has nothing to do with poverty, right? But the Planned Parenthoods are in our neighborhoods, right? And so that also is a part of Black health, because they don't only deal with abortions, but they also deal with what they would call birth control, right? And different ways to control birth in situations like that. But that has nothing to do with poverty, as they would say. But you see those Planned Parenthood advertisement targeted towards our people as well.
And I'm thinking of the context. If you look at the Black community as a collective, people often refer to that 1.4 or 1.7 trillion dollars that we spend annually. They say if the Black community in America was a separate country, we'd be either somewhere between the 12th to the 14th richest nation in the world. Mm-hmm. So when we look at our health and we look at the foods that we eat, we can't necessarily attribute it to the economy. Mm-hmm. It's more of a it's more political manipulation, because it's like, although we have the resources, we still don't have control to access. the same way we spend, $25 at McDonald's for 3 or 4 kids and an adult, maybe 2 adults, you can spend $25 at, I don't know, Big Y in Wilbraham and come home with enough food to feed your family all week. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I know exactly. So as that is very important, the access is the most important thing, because at the end of the day, we have the money.
Right.
We don't know where to spend it. And that goes with education, right?
Right.
So being educated is primary to that, because of the fact that the person that lives in the Berkshire that has the same median income as somebody that lives in the McKnight area, right?
Yep.
They still have access and education to know how to grow kale, how to grow red leaf lettuce. They farm throughout the year, and that's where the disparity happens, is knowledge disparity more so than anything, because access is very important, but knowledge is there as well.
All right. I see Andrew Keaton has a question. He says, how important is it to know your blood type when you're consuming food?
Blood type in consuming food is very hard to kind of gauge, because there's still research being done on that. And so there's a big theory that you have to eat according to your blood type. That is hard to do, because at the end of the day, when your blood type has more to do with almost survival situations, when you're like, okay, I need a blood transfusion. That's when it matters a little bit more, because what really matters is basically where you're from and what you have access to. So it's eating according to your haplotype. All right. I didn't coin that phrase, right? That was Minister Inky. So you eat according to where you're from, not your blood type. You know what I mean? Because people have access to different foods, and how food works is food is grown in certain areas because of soil content, mineral content, and things like that, access to sun. And so the food that you eat is literally designed for your body. So wherever you're from, the food that's around you is designed for your body to metabolize, to make a very long story short. So the blood type for right now, because there's not too much research, there's a lot of research being done, and it's up and down. The research is teeter-tottering a lot. You just need to stay close to where you're from and what you have access to and where you're from.
Okay. KJ, my man, asked a question. Well, there's a comment. He says, my coworkers and I were just talking about going to a bodega versus going to a convenience store in the suburbs, and the difference of foods available there, at the different locations. You want to talk about that a little bit? I go to Long Meadow. I stop at a neighborhood convenience store, and the quality of food looks one way. I go to the local bodega or, a little local penny store in our neighborhoods, and, it's a shit show. So you want to talk about that? And again, we talk about access. Are those things done purposely? I don't know. Help me to understand that.
Well, some of it is done purposely, but the neighborhood food council as well, I think that's the name of them, and other agencies in Springfield especially, has done a good job at making bodegas. They were giving bodegas grants where they were giving them fresh fruits and vegetables, right?
Yep.
So from a bodega standpoint, I can't tell you what that owner does. I know some bodega owners themselves, and they just gonna sell what you buy.
I was gonna say, I think some of that is on the neighborhood. I look at that little store across the street from the Martin Luther King Center. I always had a problem with that store. They sell more weed wrappers and the switchblades than they do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But we tolerate it. I think until we begin to set our expectations and tell them exactly what they're not going to sell in our neighborhoods, and tell them what we need, we're going to keep getting the same old thing. And we look at a strong percentage of the folks who own these little neighborhood stores, they don't even live in the neighborhood. So in most cases. So I think it's an issue of accountability in terms of holding people accountable to ensure that we're getting the types of products that we need. Because there's no way you're going to make $1 million, a couple of $100,000 a year off of blunt wrappers in Long Meadow or Southwick or Agawam like you do in any neighborhood store in the area. And I have nothing against for those who smoke. Listen, man, I'm not hating. I'm just simply saying when we have stores that thrive on that underculture, as opposed to culture itself, positive and health impacting culture, then we have a problem.
Mm-hmm. And it's big because we have to take ownership for some of this, right? So we could talk about the systematic oppression in every way, right? When it comes to food, when it comes to recidivism rates, we could talk about all that, but we have to take the onus, especially for food, because all we have to do is stop buying it, right? And so we stop buying these things, we change the trajectory on what comes into our neighborhoods and what we have access to a lot of the times. You know what I mean? So what we buy is going to be in our neighborhoods. What we don't buy is not going to be in our neighborhoods, very simply put. So we just got to take ownership of our own health, like we always say, because they're going to sell blunt wrappers because people buy blunt wrappers. I know a corner store owner that makes a good amount of money a day off of Lucy's, and Lucy's is just loose cigarettes. Makes a good amount of money, and he's not going to stop. He literally barely stocks the chips, the iced teas, all the food. He barely stocks that. I remember when he first came in the neighborhood, and I was just around him, always talking with him, and he was like, "I make more money off of Black and Milds, Lucy's, and blunt wrappers than I do food by far."
Okay. KJ goes on to say, it's true, systemic circumstances exist, but we do profit off of said systems. I mean, and to an extent, I agree with that, KJ. I would not disagree. I think when it comes down to longevity, family legacy, I think at some point we're going to have to learn to put, personal integrity and health, community health, over commerce. Mm-hmm. Right now, I think our communities are struggling. And when you talk about the impact of COVID and the way Black numbers just went through the roof, it's because we were unprepared. Mm-hmm. Our bodies was not prepared for this new disease at all. Whether it was natural or man-made, we weren't prepared. And I think we have to think about that type of thing, not for ourselves, at least for our children and grandchildren. I think we have to change how we think, how we see the world, and kind of reevaluate what's most important to us, particularly when it comes to our health. I mean, we learned that being Black in America, you could be a multimillionaire and still suffer from poor health, whether it's mental health or physical well-being. So
this is what a lot of people need to start understanding, is that, like I will reiterate 3,000 times, there's 3 layers of health: preventative, your primary care, and again, that emergency room. And let's try not to get into
the 3 layers of what? Preventative?
My 3 layers of health is preventative, your primary care, and the emergency room, right? And so in order to not to get to your primary care, so you have to get meds and whatever. If you're against a lot of the methods they use or management methods of disease they use, you want to prevent yourself from getting these diseases that are lifestyle diseases. And then if you're not paying attention to your primary care, you're going to your primary care, but you're not taking some of the guidelines they're telling you to do, you're going to end up in the emergency room. And once you get to the emergency room, for a Black person in America, the likelihood of you coming out healthy is not as high as your white counterparts. And I won't even go stats, I'll go personal experience. Me and Dee both have seen it, seen it with our own eyes. And that's the scary thing. When you start seeing it and the statistics match, that's when it gets scary. So we really have to understand, if we're marching down the street for police brutality, right? Yep. We gotta start marching for high quality foods, better healthcare, better access to healthcare, better access to mental health facilities that are geared towards us. And those are things that seriously we have the ability to do. Yep.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Let me go back to the disparities again. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go a little further. When we talk about diseases that heavily impact the Black community in America, because let's be real clear, folks in the islands, are folks in the islands impacted by the same diseases that we're impacted by here in the States? Is there a difference?
Yes.
Talk about
it. Barbados is the amputee capital of the world, right? Amputees, yeah. And you can You can Google it. It might have changed. It was 5 years ago those numbers came out. But Barbados has one of the
Barbados has been called the amputation capital of the world for years due to the rate of amputations conducted, and it's a describer which some are working to see disappear.
Yeah.
Wow. Jamaica leads as a poor foot care takes huge toll on Caribbean. Jamaica leads as poor foot care takes huge toll on Caribbean diabetics. So this whole thing with diabetes is getting us all throughout the northern hemisphere, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So it comes with the standard American diet, which is a term that's coined, right? You can look at standard American diet as almost a medical term at this point, right? Which is a diet high in trans fats, high in processed sugars, high in overcomplex proteins. And all these factors are going to play into the diabetes, high blood pressure and hypertension, same thing, heart disease, and high cholesterol, right? And so when you look at Barbados amputee capitals, first of all, to be honest, a doctor will tell you this, their quality of preventative health care isn't as high as obviously said America, right? So if anybody contracts type 2 diabetes, doesn't manage it well, they're likely to get something, get a limb amputated. Usually if you're getting a limb amputated has mostly to do with diabetes, right? Type 2 diabetes mellitus. So if you're getting an amputated leg, you have type 2 diabetes. So what happened in the Caribbean was already happening here. Instead of bringing crack, they brought processed foods, the American standard diet, to the Caribbean. And it literally happened in the 1970s. And you can look at it in Jamaica, and they documented very well in Jamaica what they did when it comes to the processed foods and trying to starve out the Caribbean. And if you didn't take aid, there's a whole thing we can go into, but we won't.
So, and that comes along the process of assimilation, everybody becoming more American, or should I say more European?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's States or over in the UK, we become more European in terms of our diet and our intake. That's interesting. I really, I often thought that, I know, like the few instances I was afforded an opportunity to go back to Antigua, and we're in Barbuda, people were eating natural foods. You understand what I'm saying? There was no McDonald's over. That's the beautiful thing about Barbuda. There were no fast food restaurants. You smell the bread baking in the morning. Hey, what's up, Letitia? You smell the bread and everything baking in the morning. You see folks going out on the boats and coming back with fish, and they're eating natural things. So I didn't know that, and it's one of those things I said I always want to go back and look at. So let me go back to diabetes. Now that I know diabetes is really killing us in this northern hemisphere. You say diabetes is it hereditary or is it not hereditary?
Well, a doctor,
I think type 2 impacts Black folks. Am I correct?
Yes, disproportionately more than our white counterparts. Yes.
Okay.
So type 2 is not, they would say it, your doctor would call it hereditary. Yes. So you can, not saying that you can't change your status or prevent it, but if your dad had type 2 diabetes and you now have the same diet and lifestyle, you will also get type 2 diabetes. And that's what they're not also saying. You have, when they mean hereditary, they really mean you have a higher likelihood if you do not change your lifestyle at all and accompany your lifestyle with your father's, you will contract type 2 diabetes.
So Healthline online says that scientists have linked several gene mutations to higher diabetes risk. Is the gene mutation due to our diet intake? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so the whole gene thing is still on. That's why when they say gene mutation and they said they just linked it, look at that. If you look at that studies are the last 10 years.
That's what it says.
Yeah, and it says the year, and it's probably in the 2000s, which that means it's very young, really young. When you look at research, you got to really look at research on a 30-year, 40-year with a lot of different demographics and a lot of different decades in there, because different decades have different factors in them. But besides that, the gene situation is easier to explain. So the mutation does happen with the diet, because if you look at cancer, right, it's not off topic, but cancer is a gene mutation. Basically, your genes stop dying. You have scheduled cell death. And if your cells don't die, that's a mutation, right? But that happens through environmental factors as well. So yes, the environment and the food you eat can create a gene mutation.
Okay. So and then they talk about it's both genetic and then there are also environmental factors that contribute. And that gets us back to our healthy eating habits. Because I mean, it's interesting. Like my mom just passed away from well, I don't want to say cancer because she passed away after a visit to the hospital. So but her siblings, my grandmother, my aunt, diabetes really bad. So they always say that diabetes runs in the family. Now I'm like 5 years away from 60. I don't have anything. So I look at my siblings. I had two brothers that passed, again, both from cancer. So we'll go to cancer next. I'm a little curious about why so many Black people are so heavily impacted by cancer, and is that also impacted by our diet? But so when they talk about it being hereditary, and when you look at the eating habits and the differences, like the hog mog and cow tongue and pigtail and all that stuff, man. Does that impact us? Like, talk about the types of diets that we're impacted by. Talk about the food intake that typically gets us.
So
macaroni and cheese.
Mac and cheese, right? I'm doing a whole class on inflammation. And so I could go hard, but I'm not, because I know Dee's gonna be like, relax, right? So
man, look, bro, this is raw, so let's do it.
So the types of diets is the diets that's gonna promote chronic inflammation. I'm going to make it very general, right? Chronic inflammation is just your body always responding with inflammation, with an inflammatory response, meaning that your immune system is always turned on. So your immune system is only supposed to turn on when you have a foreign pathogen, whether it be COVID, whether it be something you weren't supposed to eat. It's only been turned on when it's trying to fight something off. But if you're constantly trying to fight something off, your immune system is always going to be on. And so the inflammatory response happens when you eat processed sugars, right? That's going to cause diabetes, hypertension, right? When you eat table salt, right? When you eat trans fats, right? Those
I don't do trans fats, so I'm good. Okay. Woo.
I'm still waiting.
But that's
for
in
the approval.
All of our diets.
Yeah.
If we go to the Caribbean, right, and we get oxtail, bully beef, rice on peas, and then we go to the South and then we get grits, ham, and cornbread. We just hit all those things.
I get cornbread.
Right? It's not about the fact that you're eating it, it's how much we're eating it. And then how much are we complementing that with good water, fresh raw greens, a stress-free lifestyle. So we're not complimenting with that. We're stressed, we don't drink no water, we don't eat no greens, and we mad all the time. So now that's just a whole cocktail for chronic inflammation, right? And so those are the diets that are going to lead you to diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, and high cholesterol, right? And even autoimmune disease, which is killing us too. Nobody's talking about the lupus, the different types of Crohn's, IBSs, and things of that nature.
Right.
These are also related to our diet as well, right? And so the diet that we need to stay away from is decreasing how much processed sugars we're eating. All right, that's it. Like if we just decrease that, and the World Health Organization says to decrease it to 6 grams a day, right? Which I can agree with. Just 6 grams of processed sugars a day. So if that's what, me and D already know what I used to eat frosting out of tube. D got his own thing.
Are you talking about my honey buns? You talking about my honey buns, my
Twinkies?
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Hey, I'm cutting back significantly.
But listen, if people just cut back to 6 grams a day, it's going to create a whole different trajectory for disease management and as well prevention.
You know, one of the things I cut down on, and it's going to sound silly, I stopped making Kool-Aid. As simple as it sounds, I haven't had Kool-Aid in years because of all the sugar, the dye. It's crazy. I was somewhere. I think I might have been in Boston at a forum up there, and one of the sisters was talking about, you know, just how unhealthy it is, and we drink it all day long, and we put about this much sugar in the bottom of the pitcher. I was like, okay. So there's little things. I think there's little ways that we can cut back. It really shouldn't impact us at all. I mean, you start cutting back. I remember when I first stopped eating pork, about 37 years ago, I just woke up, just never touched it again. So it could be done for all those who think that you have to have, you know, eat all that meat all day, that you have to have your pork. Nah, man, you can actually cut this stuff off. I've done it. So I just want to throw that out there. Again, it ain't perfect because I love my junk food, and I'm trying to cut back on that.
But as long as you're balancing that, like that's the thing about it, you get fresh water. You know what I mean? You get fresh spring water. Right. You know what I mean? You have a real garden, right? And so those are the things that if you can't take certain things out and it's going to take you a longer time, you just got to balance that out with some really good, healthy greens, quality water throughout the day.
Give me an example of healthy greens. Are we talking collard greens, kale? For you eat vegetables on a regular basis. For cats like me, it's like, okay, I'll try it. Talk to me about different types of healthy greens that people can start with. I mean, I'm sure people eat it on a regular basis. Give an example of like 3 different types of healthy greens and a healthy way of cooking it. Frying it in a pan with all that butter and all that other stuff to season it up kind of kills the green, defeats the purpose. So talk about that.
Yeah, so easiest one to do and grow is kale. Kale's number 1 on that list, and that's easy to cook because you can massage your kale and not have to use any skillet at all. Cook it down at all. You can massage it with some olive oil and massage the kale, and it will turn it, and it will act like you were stir frying it, right? And so you don't have to put it under a fire at all, right? Kale is number 1 because 2 things are very prevalent in our community is we get problems with calcium, right? Which has to do with bone density. We start getting aches and pains around a certain age, right? That has a lot to do with our bone density. And then you have iron, which is in kale too. Our women are not getting quality iron. So those are some of the 2 situations that we're dealing with as a people that we can just knock out with kale. Then you can go Swiss chard, easy to grow. You guys are growing it, right? Easy to grow in a garden. You can make that in 2 seconds. You don't got to pay for it, much for it. And that also is higher in enzymes that help detox the liver, right? And we won't even get too crazy on how that happens, but detoxification, phytonutrients that doctors don't talk about. Phytonutrients, you guys got to research this. Phytonutrients.
What is it called?
Phytonutrients. They're smaller little enzymes and nutrients.
Oh, fighter.
No, phyto.
All right, that's why I'm asking you for clarification, because if I'm not getting it, I want to make sure everybody gets it.
Yep. So these are like smaller nutrients, right, that you have to get a small amount of each day, and they're found in real raw foods. When you cook the raw foods down, you can get lost, but you'll still get some of the nutrients as well. And Swiss chard works just like kale. You just put some olive oil in the pan, 3 minutes, and guess what? You got sauteed Swiss chard, right?
Yep.
And then third to that, one of probably the most healthiest greens that you can get today is dandelion greens, right? Dandelion greens, they taste bitter, right? You would use that in a smoothie instead of cooking that. That's real. Yeah, I know. You taste that before. That thing is bitter, right? But if you have to put it in your smoothie, if you're making a fruit smoothie, if you're making a green smoothie, you put in your green smoothie. If you need to add some sweetener, you're okay with that, do your thing, but add in the dandelion greens as well. Those are, you find those raw in just growing, period. So those are 3 of the top greens you can eat in the quality waters.
I noticed you didn't say collard greens.
No, you already mentioned collard greens.
Okay, all right.
So collard greens are also, I think they're in the same family as kale. I might be wrong, but they're also high calcium and iron raw, especially. So you can cook up. A lot of us cook it down too much, though.
Okay.
Right? You don't want to things. Y'all be cooking them. If you do, you do, right? You got to get it in some way, but you don't want to cook them for 20, 30, 40 minutes, right? You want to do those things about 10 minutes because they don't take too much to cook down and saute.
And it gives you that nice crunch. So real quick, phyto is PHYTONUTRIENTS, phytonutrients.
Yep.
Natural compounds, food and plants found in plant foods such as vegetables, fruit, whole grain products, and what's that? Legumes, LEGUMS.
Yep.
Legumes. These plant compounds have beneficial effects working with other essential nutrients to promote good health. Phyto means plant. It simply means plant nutrients. What is it? There are hundreds of phytonutrients that are often referred to as phytochemicals as well. Common phytonutrients include carotenoids such as lutein, flavonoids, coumarins, indoles, isoflavonoids. I don't know what any of this stuff are. So you might want to Google it. But what I do know is when they talk about the different types of plants and everything that it does for you. So phytonutrient-rich plants are red, orange, and yellow vegetables and fruits such as tomatoes, carrots, peppers, squash, potatoes, peaches, mangoes, melons, citrus fruits and berries, dark green leafy vegetables, like he says, such as spinach, kale, bok choy, broccoli, Swiss chard, romaine lettuce, garlic, onions, chives, leeks, whole grain products such as brown rice, wild rice, what's it, quinoa? What is that? Quinoa. Yeah, listen, I don't mess with it. So I'm listening, man. Barley, wheat berries, whole wheat grain breads, and whole grain cereals, nuts and seeds such as walnut, almonds, sunflower, sesame, flax seeds, legumes such as dried beans, peas, lentils, soybeans, soy products, tea and coffee such as green tea, black tea, and other herbal teas. So I didn't think coffee was a phytonutrient. Okay. And then also there's dark chocolate. So if you go ahead and Google, if you're not up on your diet and you want to start with something, start out with the phytonutrients just because you're probably eating them already, but you want to find an appropriate and healthy way of cooking them or preparing them, not necessarily cooking, but preparing them to be digested. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
You sound like I'm an expert, like I eat healthy.
Yeah, you doing it.
Todd walked by that honey bun rack. So even though we live in what was formerly known as food deserts, so we talk about food apartheid. When I look at a neighborhood like Mason Square, let me go back to that, to the geography. It's not like where I grew up at down in Waterbury up in Berkeley Projects, where it was just all tenement buildings and cement playgrounds, and that's it. If you live in one of those, those old Victorians, or if you live in any of the houses in Old Hill, Bay, whatever, the bottom line is you have a backyard or a side yard. And it doesn't take a lot of space to grow a garden. The garden that we grew, that we built, I think it's like, it's 8 by 8. We're going to extend it next year, 8 by 8 feet. It's real simple to do, and I tell you, it does not require a whole lot of work. It is time. There is a time commitment. You got to get out there, talk to your plants, grow your plants, and do what you do. So even though these this food apartheid exists, it's still no excuse to not be healthy. I mean, am I right? Am I wrong? And actually, it's less expensive because you buy them seeds for a little bit of nothing, or you can go buy, go out into the rural areas and get your plants and everything for a little bit of nothing. Much cheaper. I tell you, the bigger bang for your buck, you'll save tons on grocery shopping when you can go out to the backyard and just pick from your garden. So it's cost efficient. Yeah.
And literally, if you spent, let's say, $300 on making, let's say, 5 raised beds with like 30, 40 plants, you literally made a $300 investment that's going to repay you the next summer, sometimes the next summer, and the next summer with little to no maintenance. Well, obviously, you're going to have to water them, and you're going to have to run about the plants, even though you're going to fail sometimes a little bit. But those plants come back, like kale and Swiss chard. If you do 3 beds of that, you don't have to. 3 beds will equal about maybe 40, 50 plants of those things, right? And you're not having to buy Swiss chard or kale for like the next maybe year. You know what I mean? Obviously, when it's off season, then you have to buy it. But you just literally probably save thousands of dollars in the next 2 years. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. You know what I mean? And then you can get repurposed wood. So you don't have to pay that much. You can use your own soil. Like, it's really inexpensive to start your own garden. Liz Ogilvy, Anna Muhammad, you have Tucson
Yep.
From the GTC. You have the GTC themselves. There's so many people. Our Journey, we have one, but we use them to help us. But we have a
If
urban
you drive down Main Street, they're like, please pick food from my garden.
Yeah.
Just like
Ogilvy is giving away spaghetti squash now. Right? So we're gonna have some spaghetti squash at Our Journey, 321 Albany Street on tomorrow, Thursday from 6 to 8, and then again on Friday 4 to 7. So you can pick up spaghetti squash free of charge. You know what I mean? So it's free. You know what I mean? And you can make spaghetti squash into spaghetti, right? You can just put it in the oven. If you have an oven for 15, 20 minutes, put something, if you a sauce person, put some sauce on it. It tastes good by itself. Put some sea salt on it. And that will probably fill you up for the night. One will fill you up for the night for sure. I don't care how much you eat.
Tell you, once this pandemic breaks, I think I'm going to have a food tasting in one of these facilities and just let people go in and taste different types of vegetables and explore the different types of ways that you can prepare them. And I know people do it on a small scale, but I think at some point we need to have a healthy food fest, not a soul food fest, not a Cajun fest, but just a healthy food fest. I mean, I would like to go, though. I'm not big on vegetables, and I'd be lying to everyone who's viewing this right now if I said I was big on veggies. I ain't big on veggies. Give me some greens, and I'll eat that every day, all day. Collard greens, that is. So everything else, I'm always a little hesitant because of the texture. But then I realized that there are people who prepare things a little differently, and the texture, doesn't conflict. So I think it's one of them things that we need to look at. Go ahead.
We had the vegan fest January. Was it 2020? Yeah, wow. It's January 2020. Yeah, January 2020.
Yep.
400 people came out to that event.
Right.
The first ever Springfield Veg Fest, and most of them were Black people. I was so happy to see so many people going to a vegan fest that was based in Springfield, run by people from Springfield, and with that came a lot of people getting educated on like plant-based food can taste good. Yeah. And that's one thing that people also have to understand, because the concept of what tastes good is really geared to what we've been given, right? Because our taste buds are memory sensors. I'm not going to go on a tangent, but our taste buds are memory sensors. So if you never tasted something, you're never going to crave it.
Yeah, true.
You know what I mean? So you got to understand that, like, not you, but people in general have to understand, like, you can change your taste buds to remember and crave only good foods. Sometimes I'll get a craving. I haven't eaten meat in about 5 years. I'm not saying meat is bad or anything like that, but I haven't eaten meat in 5 years. I haven't craved meat probably in 3.5 years. Dairy as well. One time somebody actually put some cheese in this vegan burrito that was supposed to be vegan. I tasted, I didn't swallow. I was like, what? The taste wasn't familiar to me. That was what scared me. It was like, wow, this cheese that I used to eat daily, D-Moss, every day I used to have cheese without fail.
Right.
I couldn't recognize the taste, but I knew it tastes bad to me. And so, not saying cheese is terrible, but I'm saying that you can change your taste buds. It takes a while, but you could change your taste buds as well.
No, absolutely. Listen, man, give me some pork bacon and some, man, all that ham. Not like a ham sandwich. Man, I can't even. Vicky's brother cooked some pork something the other day. Yo, dude, I had to go outside. I just can't take the smell nor the taste.
Yeah.
So once you purge your body of it, you'll be surprised. You'll survive. You'll survive off that. So the time is now. It's what time is it? It's we're at the 5-minute mark. It's 8:30. It's a 1-hour show. So there are a number of areas I didn't get to, and I want to come back and at some point and talk about that, because I want to get into I want to talk a little bit about COVID, but if you could touch on it briefly, what can we do? Again, Springfield is a red city, last I heard. If the numbers have changed, and somebody please correct me. But it tends to impact our community more so than everybody else's. We're wearing our masks. We're staying home. What else could we be doing? What's the best way of keeping our hands sanitized? What's the best way of protecting ourselves, building our immune system, aside from the diet and all the great stuff that you just talked about?
Yeah, well, I mean, washing your hands, obviously, for more than a minute. All the guidelines that the government has given you are ways to stay away from germs and microbiome completely, which are microbes that you come in contact with. If you touch your hands right now, you touch a table, you're gonna have microbes, little animals on your hands, right? And that's how you get. If you had a black light, you'd be able to see some of these things. Certain lights can show you them, but so washing on a constant basis for more than a minute can help that as well. The government guidelines, I say stick to those. But when it comes to boosting your immune system, one thing that we have to also understand with the study of immunology, right, which is the study of the immune system and the study of infectious diseases as well, those are very young studies, right? And so the guidelines, I'm telling you to follow them. But the boosting your immune system is something that I'm telling you that could be very detrimental to you, because that's what's actually killing us. Our immune system is reacting very fast and hard to the COVID scare and the COVID disease. I'm sorry, not the disease, but I always forget the word, but the COVID-19. So it reacts very, very, very strongly to COVID, and the problem becomes we have too much of a response, and now we can't breathe, right? And then our lung capacity is now lessened, and our bronchial tubes are closing. So our airways and our breathing mechanisms are shortened, right? And so that's something that we're hearing a lot about. A lot of people are saying boost your immune system. I want you guys to research this yourself. I don't have too much time. It's called the NRF2 system, or your antioxidant system, right? And so we have to understand that antioxidants are going to trump the immune system. The immune system is going to do its job, but to boost it, whatever you're doing, I don't know what people are saying, how to boost it. Don't boost your immune system too much, because that's what's actually causing the death of a lot of people in COVID in our community.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In our community, what we need to focus on is doing the social distancing thing for sure. And then also asking our government for more information on COVID, because it changes so much, right? And so that's why I can't make a statement on COVID, because the COVID-19 has actually changed and mutated in some states. You know what I mean? So wow. You never know what you're getting. Wow. The information and the public access to this information in COVID-19 needs to be disseminated properly, because you can't just give somebody guidelines. You have to tell them why these guidelines are actually relevant to the actual disease, right? And so when we talk about COVID, just always following those guidelines, but asking your government and going online and learning about what COVID is and how it affects your body, because face masks alone are not going to help, because guess what? A whole group of nurses can get it. I have my mother that works in a hospital in Boston. I'll be quick. And all her nurses has everything. They have the protocol for protective gear when it comes to COVID, but a whole floor contracted COVID.
Wow.
So how is COVID spreading if it's not through the respiratory system? Where else is it spreading? And that's the information we need to ask. If we don't have enough information on that, we just stay safe as much as possible. But boosting our immune system is the problem. People with pre-existing conditions are going to be more likely to die from COVID, or complications due to COVID, not the actual COVID itself, but remember, complications due to COVID. But we have to focus on our antioxidant system. Berries, a lot of berries. Berries will do you good. The ginger, the turmeric, we know what to do, especially we know better, right? Making sure those things are organically grown, especially the fruits, and intaking them on a daily basis, 3-4 times a day. And you will see a difference in your health completely. And then the way your body responds to foreign invaders, which is COVID. So Be very mindful of your antioxidant system and research that antioxidant system and NRF2 system.
All right, y'all. This is Black Health. Let's talk about it. We're here every Wednesday. My name is D Moss. That's my man Justin Yard. I'm learning, he's talking, and I'm listening. So as everybody should be. This is the conversation that we have to normalize. These are the things we should be talking about on a regular basis. It shouldn't come, anything he says today should not come as a surprise, because we have to keep having these conversations. We need to talk about the economy and how it impacts us. We need to talk about the political process and what we have access to. But the most important piece is to make sure that we have good health. We live in a country where the government has damn near declared war on us at times. So we have to make sure that we stay safe and protect ourselves. And I'm not talking about grabbing guns and running through the window. I'm saying protecting our bodies, our beings, our very essence. Everything we eat, everything we do impacts how we think and how we feel. So we have to be cognizant of that. So with that, I'm done. Justin, any last thoughts before we close out this show?
Love yourselves.
Always. All right, y'all. So this is Black Health. And yeah, we'll be back next Wednesday. Peace.